Well, hello everybody. Thanks so much for joining this lunchtime, this bright day on Thursday. We're really delighted that you're able to tune in. My name is Jess Stockford and I lead the board appointments practice at Prospectus. We are a recruitment and search firm that specialise in working with social purpose organisations. We do that globally and we do it here in the UK. We're really delighted that we've been able to partner with our client, the Smallwood Trust, with the Young Trustees movement, with Getting on Board and a host of other organisations and individuals and movements who are really committed to social change, to supporting diversity into boards in the sector, and also ensuring that the lived experience of trustees is valued and represented. I'm going to hand over in a moment to our panel chair, Shana Begum, and you'll get to be inspired by and hear all about the brilliant board trustee shadowing programme that the Smallwood Trust have piloted. But first, I just wanted to run through a few small housekeeping items, if that's okay. This webinar is being recorded, so we will make sure it's available for wider circulation afterwards, and it will come to you, and it will be available through all of our LinkedIn feeds and so on. You'll see that as a webinar, different to a normal kind of Zoom meeting, we have you as a guest, you're muted at the moment, so just the panelists and hosts are able to speak. However, there is a Q&A section that you'll be able to see below, and we're really delighted that Mita Desai from the Young Trustees movement is going to be able to respond to any questions or comments that you've got. If you're looking for bits of information, Mita will be really pleased to respond in the Q&A. And you'll know from experience that there's usually a survey or a kind of follow-up form associated with these type of events. We're going to do things a little bit differently here. So halfway through the session and after the panel session, we're going to take a bit of a brain break. And we're going to ask that you open a link, which is going to be posted in the chat and the Q&A for you to complete a short survey. Once you've completed that survey, you'll receive a brilliant resource that we've put together, which is going to be stuff full of brilliant links, ideas, signposts, and other resources for you to think about whether you're an aspiring trustee, whether you're a charity, whether you're anybody else interested in this kind of work. And we're really proud of that really helpful resource that's been put together by a much wider group of people. And then once we've come back from that break, I'll be handing over to Penny Wilson from Getting on Board, who many of you will know, who will lead a kind of Q&A session. So any questions that you've got for the panel, for any of us, we'll be able to pick all of those up. I hope that's helpful for you. That's all from me for now, but I'm going to hand over now to Shana, who's going to host the panel session. Over to you, Shana.
Thank you so much, Jess. So welcome everyone. My name is Shana Begum and I will be chairing. I'm also a shadowee on the program as well, and I use my 25 years lived experience of domestic abuse part of the work I do. So that's enough for me. I'm very conscious of time. I'm going to be extremely strict with time, so apologies in advance if I cut people short, but that's my job as chair for today. And when I ask you the questions, please introduce yourselves as well. So my first question will go to Ambreen Shah. What motivated you to do this and why? So over to you, Ambreen.
Thanks, Shana. So just to introduce myself, I'm Embedding Shah. I'm a trustee at Smallwood Trust and charity bank. Quite new to being a trustee, so it's been a year since I've been at Smallwood Trust and less time at charity bank. It's my experience as a new trustee that I guess I'm bringing to the table. And my background is just as a social researcher, having worked for over 20 years in the not-for-profit sector. I guess for me, what made me motivated to do this sort of shadowing idea was that as I came into this sort of arena of work, it became very clear to me that trustees, as a general rule, are, you know, predominantly white, older men, and pretty much from well-educated backgrounds. So you probably know the stats, but 7 out of 10 trustees are men with an average age of 61, not 71. So working class people, younger people, people from racialised minorities are not represented well at all. And in that context, lived experience expertise is undervalued and underrepresented on these boards. But I'm quite keen that there should be, you know, the saying goes, nothing about us without us. And that's really important to me, because it's really horrible being in spaces where someone's talking about you when they haven't lived the stuff that you've lived through. So it got me thinking, how can I, what steps, what quick win could I do to help shift the power to communities that Smallwood Trust in particular was seeking to serve, which is around women, supporting women around financial resilience. And I'm sure Paul will say a bit more. And that's where the shadowing idea emerged, about creating an opportunity for women with lived experience to sort of shadow me as I embark on my first role as a trustee. For me, I wanted the opportunity to open up that board space, recognizing that there are many people out there who would be fantastic trustees, but this world is not open to them. You know, 81% of charities still don't advertise the positions that they are recruiting for. So people just wouldn't know that these opportunities are there. Or they lack confidence. You know, there is this sense of that it's not for someone like me. So I haven't been a trustee, but I've certainly reported to trustee boards. And again, my impression was these people are pretty affluent, to be honest, pretty well educated, got time on their hands because they're semi-retired. So there was a certain image that I had of a trustee, to be honest. And so was it for someone like me? I don't know. And then in the context of women in particular, I think there was this idea of headspace. I wanted to create an opportunity that didn't take up too much time. Because I recognise that many women are juggling all the time, whether it's childcare, work, home responsibilities, being a mother, a daughter, whatever it might be. And there isn't really the headspace to get involved. So I wanted to create an opportunity that would allow people to shadow without the burden of being and having the full responsibility of a board trustee, but would certainly open up and demystify this space for them, and that opportunity to learn by observing. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Ambreen. We really appreciate that. So I'm going to pass it on to Paul with a question. So please, Paul, introduce yourself. And the question to you is, tell us about the shadowing program. Over to you.
Thank you, Shana, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Paul Carberry. I'm the Chief Executive at Smallwood, and it's coming up to my 5th anniversary soon. So the Trust, we're a grant-making charity. Our mission is to enable women to be financially resilient, as Ambreen mentioned. And this year, our total grant spend this year will be just over £3 million. And we fund across a whole range of different programmes. So, you know, we're all quite aware at the moment of the emerging fuel and energy crisis, for example. So we actually provide lots of small grants to individual women to help them, you know, pay for those kind of essential needs that, you know, many of us, you know, would often take for granted. We also have quite a comprehensive grant program that supports what we term frontline women's organisations. So as you can see from Shana's background, a lot of the funding we actually distribute to women's organisations is about tackling gender-based violence as it relates to financial resilience. And we're also increasingly involved in funding quite a lot of influencing activities as well as it relates to our mission. Before I talk about some detail of the shadowing programme, I just wanted to tell you about what the motivation was from my side of things. You know, when Ambreen first proposed the idea, and I think, you know, it was just a really, really good idea. I kind of thought, why didn't I think of that myself, you know, in the first place? And it just seemed an obvious next step for Smallwood in terms of our own journey to embed more lived experience in our governance and our grant making. And so the board had just agreed a governance action plan in the preceding months. And so it really fitted in with that, and it was a real practical step, for us to take, and involve, people through who are also being beneficiaries of our grants, but through our wider stakeholder networks as well. And then just to give you a little bit more context of why the programme is so important to Smallwood, and why it's a real sort of key tenet of what we want to do. I'll just share a couple of outcomes that we want to achieve as an organisation. So they are, that women have opportunities and power to improve their standards of living and fulfil their potential, that women are empowered to make changes to the systems that create gendered poverty, and decisions that affect women's lives are made in partnership with women. So you can see that having a shadowing programme is a real sort of core part of our mission. And then in terms of some of the practical examples, that we've developed over the last sort of 6 or 7 months since the programme's been running, it's really important to say as well, is that we've learned a lot from each other. So it hasn't just been about Smallwood providing the opportunity. It's also really helped us as an organisation and as a board, really learn more about lived experience as we go through our grant making processes. But some of the real practical things that we did a short induction programme. As part of that, we had a webinar to introduce the work of Smallwood for the shadowies, and also we had about 16 people who originally expressed an interest, and we appointed 3 of those, and we brought all of those interested people together and ran a workshop with them to encourage those as well who didn't quite make the appointment onto the programme. All the shadowies attend all of our board meetings, and we also have lots of subcommittees. So, for example, we've had a couple of grants panel meetings in the last few months as well. So myself and Ambreen, we have pre-board briefings with Shana, Sarah and Chika, who's the other shadowy. There's also a post-board catch-up, which has largely been Ambreen that has been liaising on that. And Ambreen's been really good at sort of having touch base sort of meetings with everybody as well, just to see how they're getting on and sort of passing on any opportunities that might arise. Some of the other structures, which I think is probably worth just mentioning, Shana, before you cut me off, maybe is
1 minute.
is that each shadowy has a £500 personal development budget. We pay all the expenses, including childcare. So this has all been done online so far, but we did have our first in-person board meeting last month in London. So it's really important to meet all of those expenses. And we have developed a kind of simple code of conduct, which also covers our organisational policies, such as declarations of interest, etc.
Thank you so much, Paul. There is another question for you, but it will be open to Ambreen and others as well. What are the benefits for the charity? So since you've had the shadowing program, what are the benefits for you as an organisation?
I'm happy to start. So I think there's a lot of the benefits, I think have been really this sort of co-learning, from and to each other. But it's really enabled the trust to be really intentional about living our values. And as I said, it has been a practical application of our mission and our wider EDI work that we've been embarking upon. I think it's really helped, and I'm sure Ambreen will agree with this, it's really helped enormously for the board to have deeper conversations about the impact we want to achieve as an organisation. And I think having yourself, Shana, Sarah and Chika around the board table actually keeps the conversations really focused on impact, and it kind of just makes it real. It is kind of my observation of that. I think something really important for grant makers, and Shana, again, I think something you mentioned in a recent interview we did with you, is that you said that you enjoyed sort of seeing what happens behind closed doors. And I think in terms of grant making, it has brought really sort of fresh transparency into our grant making. And I think as a grant maker, that's really important for us to be able to shine a light on our decision making. And it's certainly helped raise our profile and expanded the trust network since we've been, since we've implemented the programme. And it's helped not only sort of develop some new partnerships, but which are potentially going to lead on to other things as well. But it's helped cement some conversations and partnerships that we were already been involved in. And on a sort of personal level, which I think is important as well as a chief executive and any other CEOs that are out there, it's sort of really helped me learn more about the value of having lived experience within the organisation, has acted as a real motivational factor in pursuit of our outcomes. And we've got a big agenda in terms of reducing gendered poverty, and having that lived experience on the board really keeps a strong focus on that.
Thank you so much, Paul. And Breen, would you like to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that while the intention wasn't to recruit people who necessarily wanted to become trustees, I think in hindsight, what's happened is that, I've spoken to people who said, oh, we're finding it really hard to get young people onto our board because, it's a space that they're not familiar with. And I think this is a really supportive way to nurture someone to gain that confidence, to recognize that actually if they can do it, I can do it, because I've got quite a lot of knowledge in this area. So succession planning, whether it's for your own organization or for another board, for the benefit of another board within the charitable sector, I think it's got real potential there. And it's not, this is the as far as I'm aware, this type of approach is the only thing out there that's not about, because you can go on training courses and absolutely there's some wonderful training courses that people on this panel provide as well. But actually this is the, opening up that actual space to observe and nurture that talent around the role. And the other thing is, I think this is a really gentle step that boards can take. If there are CEOs out there that want to encourage their boards to be more diverse, this is a really gentle step in that process, whereby boards can just get to know people and then see the value that they're bringing to the board in a way that opens up that discussion. So a very gentle step for those boards that are perhaps a little bit reserved about bringing change and bringing diverse talent around their table.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ambreen. So I'm going to move on to my fourth question, and it's for Syra. Syra, you will have to go first. So please introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, and what are the benefits of being a shadowee is my question for you.
Hi, thank you so much, Shauna. My name is Syra. I am an asylum seeker from Pakistan. I am a survivor of domestic violence and a single mother, currently working as a director at Apna Haq, which is a Rotherham-based women's organization. I also volunteer at a local minster, and I am a system coordinator at Arts to Life UK, which is a Bristol-based company. So the benefits of a shadowee, let me just start with why I started. What was the motivation? I never thought that this is something for me. I have been in the charity sector for a long time. I've been volunteering a lot, and the thing that I was so curious to know was how the process actually works behind the doors, and what is actually happening. So I thought when I came across this opportunity, I thought maybe this is the chance to know. I never thought that I might get selected because it's really intimidating getting on board. It's something you think that this is not for you, and so I just wanted to know and see what happens there, what people talk about. And like Amreen was saying, that it is this stereotype that this is something for a particular class or group of people, and normally young people like me, my age fellows, they would probably think that this is not something for them. So initially I just started I was curious, but then being there, I thought that it's something I want to do, and I felt like I do have this potential, and this gave me the confidence to apply for a board role that I have recently taken. So I think for me, well, the benefit was to get to meet people especially like-minded people, and to gain the confidence. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saira. So my story is similar to Saira. I'm going to take that question as well, what the benefits as a shadowee. So it's incredible just shadowing. I see Ambreen as a mentor, and when you're not familiar in those spaces, it can be very, very daunting when you turn into just a head nodding sort of board member. And I didn't want that. And I thought, that's how it is in board. I'm part of lots of boards now, and that's scary for me when you have board members who do not question. But since I've met Ambreen, as just observing Ambreen, the benefits for me is she's kind of fearless and courageous, and I'm thinking you can be a board member and you can ask questions, because that's the whole point. And if that's not familiar to you, for somebody like me who's come from a very disadvantaged background, 25 years of lots of level of abuse and trauma, it's not even on your radar. Going on a board, it's not even within your consciousness. But the way they've valued me, the benefits for me is my, confidence has skyrocketed, where now I'm a trustee for a national organization, Save Lives. We're a domestic abuse charity. And again, it's learning from Ambreen and sharing it out to other boards as well. And I'm sitting on another board. I can see what best practice is now. So that nurturing side, the pre-brief and debrief, meeting Saira. I mean, we're three women from totally three different backgrounds at three different stages of our life, but it gives me hope. It's like when Saira says, oh my gosh, Shana, I was there. So even Shiku's not with us today, Shiku's not with us, and she's at a different stage from me. So the opportunities are great, and the benefits for me is the contacts and learning the lessons, and increasing that confidence is so important. So I'll be quiet now because we've got other questions, and this question is for Ambreen and Paul. What lessons have you learned to date? Because I know sometimes it's scary opening up to your boards to people that are not used to boards. So what lessons have you learned to date? Ambreen, you can take that first, and then we'll move it to Paul, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say before I move it to that, I remember speaking to Saira particularly at the beginning of this journey, her saying, oh, being a trustee, that's like a dream, that's something I could never do. And this is like, I don't know how many months later, but not many months later, and she is a trustee of a local charity that supported her. So I think, it's amazing how just learning by observing can open up a space and give you the confidence to step into something that perhaps you probably didn't have the confidence to step into before. So that's always stayed with me, I guess, when we initially had that conversation. I guess in terms of lessons learned, for me, having a cohort model, so you recognise that when Paul and I first discussed this idea, we were going to take on one shadowee, but actually in the end, because of the interest that was shown by the people that applied, we thought, well, actually, does it make a difference if we take on one or four or three? And actually we took on 4 people, and one person was not able to, for their own personal circumstances, take it forward. But for me, that cohort model has worked really well. And if and when we are probably going to do this again at Smallwood, but that taking a cohort forward, because I think my sense is that you found it supportive, and please come in to talk to each other as well, because as you say, there are very different stages of your journey, and actually being able to talk to each other and relate to each other and to be able to support each other. So outside of my involvement, I got a strong sense that, Shana has invited Saira to some of the events that she holds, and that's been supportive to her. So, and going on this journey together has been one of those really important bits of learning for me. Being more trauma informed. So again, I didn't give it too much thought. I think we thought it was a good idea and we ran with it, and we didn't, and the learning has happened on the journey as we've gone through. But one of the things that was very obvious to me is that when we read the applications that came in, and the application process was literally, there was no particular questions. It was like, if this is of interest to you, send Paul an email or send me an email and we'll get back in touch with you. And some people wrote a line, some people wrote a paragraph, some people wrote 2 paragraphs, but it wasn't overly onerous. but we did talk about seeking women with lived experience of poverty. So I think everyone felt the need to go, this is how brilliant I am, but hey, I meet your criteria because this is what's happened to me in my life. And that is uncomfortable reading, but it's almost like I don't apply for a job and have to write down all the terrible things that have happened to me in my life. So why should anyone else have to? So I guess, again, another bit of learning for me is that in doing this again, to be more trauma informed, and just thinking it through, and why not have, it's a trust-based model. You ask someone, have you got lived experience of whatever it is you want? And you tick a box, and I trust you. and should you progress in the process, should you feel comfortable to speak about your experiences, then that's your choice. It's not that I'm making you tell me about everything that's happened to you, because that just doesn't seem very fair. And the other thing is to have a flexible approach. So it's worked the way it's worked because actually of the people that Shana and Saira and Shiku are, they're all busy women doing different things in their lives. And I guess how much they're able to get involved has been informed by them. One of the early conversations that we had is what sort of role that they would have at the board meetings, for instance. And it was a combination of their views as well as the view of the chair that meant they actually have observer status at the board meeting. Because as Shiku actually said to me, it takes the pressure off. You can really sit there and really learn and not feel like, oh God, someone's going to pick on me in a minute and I'm going to have to say something that's vaguely intelligent, and so it takes that pressure off. So it's not a fixed model. There's no blueprint. It really depends on the people that go on the journey with you and how you take it forward. But it's absolutely been brilliant so far.
Thank you. Paul, lessons learned to date.
Well, I was thinking about this yesterday, and if I was taking or wanted to recommend a board shadowing program in another organisation, what would be some of the key ingredients that would be needed, for example? So I think, as everybody's seen from today, I think having a board champion is really important if you're thinking about developing a program like this. It really needs to have not just a buy-in from the board, but I think it needs to have somebody on the board, who's really passionate about the program and who's also willing to commit, probably a little bit of additional time, I think, if we're being honest, in order to make it all work. So it hasn't been onerous in terms of either mine or Ambreen's time, but we have actually thought about things, even though we have done things quite quickly, we've also done it in a careful way, so that there is a time investment that is required certainly at the beginning of the process when once you've selected the people to join you on the shadowing program. And I think it's just really important that if there's a senior executive involved, and certainly having a board member as a champion, that is really understood in advance, because I could see how things might not go well if that wasn't in place at the beginning. And I think certainly as we're moving out of COVID, I think when we all met in person, it was really nice, wasn't it? And I think having, practically speaking, ensuring that there are enough resources available to enable people to attend in-person meetings. I know that sounds obvious, but sometimes, and I think you need to be proactive. So at Smallwood, we try and be proactive to say, you can claim for your travel, for example, because often people might find it quite hard to ask for that, even though it is available. So I think it's just been really upfront about how you as an organisation will facilitate people to attend in-person meetings, if that's what you intend to do. So they're kind of, I would say, my three main ingredients: is having a board champion, committing the required amount of time up front to actually implement it, and then on a real practical basis, removing any sort of barriers that people might have in terms of finances. And certainly, obviously, that's very important for us, because we're an organisation that wants to support financial resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Paul. And I think that's really important. And I'm sure Saira will agree as well, having someone like Ambreen Shah, because sometimes when you are in board level meetings, and because you don't know, sometimes they'll use jargon, sometimes there's a huge gap in your knowledge, and you might not want to put your hand up and say, sorry, what does that mean? But because we have Ambreen's well ahead of everything, and she can, just by our facial expressions, she knows, okay, maybe Shana didn't fully understand this bit. And having that person like Ambreen who will ask those questions for you, I think that's really helped me, because I didn't have to be the person putting my hand up saying, sorry, what was that again? What do you mean? So that's really helped me with my confidence as well. So we have 3 more minutes. So I'm going to go to Syra one more time. Syra, you know, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go to our end of panel break, which will be in 2 minutes?
I think I'd just like to say that it's something, if somebody like me who is an asylum seeker, you know, who is a migrant from another country, can join a board and be a part of this program, and then from this they can become a board member, then I think it could be for anybody, really. Like in the beginning, I really thought that this is something not for me. I never even thought that I'm going to be selected for this program. You know, it was just like, okay, let's just apply. There's no harm in applying for this, because I was so curious to know that what actually happens. So it was just my curiosity that brought me here. But the only thing that I would like to say, that it's for everybody. Anybody can join the board if you really want to. Yeah, you just have to, you know, make that
first step, that first courageous step. Yes, and put yourself in that vulnerability. Thank you so much, Syra. I'm really disciplined with my timekeeping, and I'm on time, and I'm going to pass it back on to Jess, who will tell you more. Thank you very much.
Shana, thank you. You are, you're just to the second. Thank you, Shana. Thank you, Syra. Yes, it's for everybody, and it absolutely should be. Thank you so much for your participating in the panel this morning. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Ambreen. I think every board needs trustee like Ambreen Shah. We're going to take a 5-minute break now, and if you look in your Q&A, you will see a little link that's just been posted. So whilst you have a stretch, take a quick loo break. Try not to get drawn into answering emails or anything like that. First of all, please complete the form and the survey for us. We're really interested in trying to build and advance this work, this shadowing work. We want to hear from you about what would be helpful. It's in the chat, not the Q&A. Thank you very much. Just please look for it in the chat there, the link. At 12:40, Penny Wilson from Getting on Board will facilitate a Q&A session. So there's some brilliant questions that have been asked in the first piece, and Penny will make sure that we're able to respond to all of those, and we'll draw Syra, Shana, Ambreen and Paul into those questions. But for now, do go and have a stretch. Please complete the questionnaire, and we'll see you in 5. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. It's 12:40. Thank you, Shauna. Shauna's on it with the timekeeping. Yes. So we're going to take some questions. Thank you for the questions that you've been sending through. I thought that was such an interesting session, and your questions are fantastic. So let's dive straight in. Let's start with Malcolm John's question. So Malcolm says, Smallwood is clearly an inclusive organisation. Would you encourage charities which were not so inclusive to adopt shadowing? What would they need to put in place first? Does shadowing work for everyone? So what if organisations aren't ready? Ambreen, I'm going to come to you first.
As I said before, I think this is the perfect, for organisations that are slightly reluctant for whatever reasons to bring new people in and new talent in. I think this is a great way for someone to, you sell it as a mentoring exercise. You're mentoring somebody to think about how this opportunity, whether it's in that organisation or future organisation, a different organisation, doesn't really matter. So I think if people are reluctant, selling it as a, we know that COVID has wreaked havoc for young people seeking opportunities and experience, and the figures are shocking for the number of young people on boards. So sell it as a mentoring exercise, and I always believe that once people get to know people, once they get to know each other, you stop seeing the categories that people fall into, whether they're brown, Asian, women, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter, because what you see is the person in front of you and the talent that they're able to bring. So I think this is a sell it as a mentoring exercise if that's what it takes, but to provide that opportunity for people to come into a board environment and observe it, if nothing else, I think is a really gentle way to introduce new people to a board.
Thank you. And Mita, I'm going to come to you if you're ready to answer. So I guess any thoughts on, are there any risks here if organisations aren't ready?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because if the board culture isn't in place to enable new voices to feel welcome and know the why this is so powerful, then it could potentially have a harmful impact if someone's coming in and not feeling welcome. So I think that there is an exercise that people need to do before they ask people to join these spaces is, are the new voices coming into the room, and are people in the room going to be in their comfort zone, their stretch zone, which is fine and support in this, or are they going to be in their panic zone? And if they're going to be in their panic zone, that is not fair, and we need to ask, what is it that we need to do to ensure that that this program is always either going to be in their comfort or stretch zone, and it might be just a changing of making sure that people are onboarded in terms of the mindset and the power of the program before they come on board.
Great, thank you. Taking a completely different question here. Somebody's asked a really interesting question about how you got the word out. So how did you get the word out to attract potential shadowees and gain their interest? I'm actually going to ask this question to Saira and Shauna. You were talking very powerfully about how these opportunities, you didn't think they were open to you. So what was it? What did you see in the Smallwood ad that made you think, yeah, actually, I'm going to put my name forward for this? Saira, let me come to you first.
So I've been the current the organization where I'm a director right now. I was a service user, and I've been always telling them, if they could let me know about different opportunities that come up. So they told me that there's this opportunity, and if you would like to join, and so that's how I got to know about this. My only reason, as I've already explained, was because I was just very curious to know how things work at the board, what it is like being on the board, because I just thought that it's always was very intimidating for me. So when I joined it, I just felt like there's just normal people like us. So there's nothing really different. So it was just this curiosity to know what's going on, what's happening. So that was one thing. And there was another thing was that because I myself have been a survivor of domestic violence, and I want to help women, and I'd like to see that what organizations, how they are working, what they are doing. So that was one of the other reasons for me to go and be a part of Smallwood. Yeah.
Thank you. Shauna.
Thank you, Penny. So for me, it was an email that landed in my inbox, and I was just curious. And I think my email back was a one-liner, but it was after meeting Ambreen, because after the email, Ambreen, we had a meeting, and through that process of meeting Ambreen, I thought, you know, she presented a thing called psychological safety for me. I thought, oh, this person seems really, really friendly. And when I did share my story, she was listening, wasn't just listening to respond, she was listening to truly understand. And I thought I really liked the feel of this organization. And then I was a shadowee, and it's been a pleasure since. Yeah, so it was the email and that interview like meeting, which seemed like two friends just talking. So it was great.
And that's, I mean, it's really interesting that Cyrus said somebody encouraged her to apply, and you've said that encouragement, Shana, when you actually got to the app, you know, when you actually had the conversation with Ambreen, how important that is to feel, you know, that you're being encouraged. And Paul and Ambreen, from your side of things, what were the mechanics of getting the opportunity out there? It would be good if only one of you would answer that, but I don't know who. Yeah, Ambreen, you go for it.
I mean, it was, I know that Paul sent it to a number of grant holders that, you know, in terms of recipients, so to publicise that opportunity to the charities that Smallwood funds. It was an opportunity that was put onto LinkedIn, so people who wanted to apply there. So I guess it was an open opportunity, but targeted particularly at and routed through organisations that Smallwood funds too. We didn't do too much more because it wasn't about volume. We weren't wanting volumes and volumes of people. It was just about getting the right people and choosing from a handful. So again, we didn't want hundreds of applications to choose from, as it were. So it was quite a light touch process, I would say, but going through our networks was a key one, I guess.
Thank you. Paul, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to that, as a grant maker, we resisted the temptation to put too much process into it, because I think, as everybody's sort of, you're hearing from, I think having a really simple and straightforward process, friendly, I think I'm pleased that people are saying it was a friendly process, because, you know, I think that is definitely what to aim for, because there is a tendency to criteria everything to within an inch of its life, and this is just certainly not that type of program. I don't think it needs to be really open, you know, and have those series of conversations that everybody's mentioned, I think are really, really important to so people, you know whether it is the right opportunity for them or not.
Thank you. That's a really strong message there. Make it simple. So moving on to a different sort of question, and we've got Deepa, Yusuf and Jane all wanting an answer to this one. So if people are watching as aspiring trustees and they love the sound of enrolling in a shadowing programme, where should they start, Ambreen?
Well, Paul and I've spoken about doing another one for, you know, beginning of next year, but that's just with Smallwood. For me, I think there is a bit of you know, I suppose events like this, we're hoping that other charitable organisations will take this on board as something, as a strategic initiative for them to do. And I know there are a few organisations out there that are absolutely thinking of doing that. And I guess it's keeping an eye out on LinkedIn and where those opportunities might apply, because obviously one of the key bits of learning is do it openly. The other thing is I would say to individual aspiring trustees is knock on the door of the organisations that you're interested in being a shadowee of, and ask. So whether you ask an individual trustee member, could I shadow you, or whether you go to the organisation that you feel passionate about and say, look, I want to be a trustee. I recognise I'm at the beginning of this journey. I want to see a board in action. Would you be willing for me to observe a board meeting or two? And you'd be surprised how many organisations might actually say yes. So I would encourage individuals to just approach the people, and it's very doable these days because of spaces like LinkedIn, I think.
That's great, thank you. And Jess, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but just to point out, we've got Mark and Daniel saying they're soon to implement scheme. So I guess if anybody is watching this session and knows that they're about to have a shadowing scheme, do put something in the chat about, you know, the name of your charity so that people know to look out for those. Jess, from a recruiter perspective, did you have anything to add to Ambreen's tips?
I was nodding my head vigorously at the end there about feeling empowered to knock on the door of a charity or another community organisation that you know of or you're involved with, I think there'll be a positive response. So I would really, really encourage and support people in doing that. The resource document that we've put together has got some incredible organisations who work in this space and would also be able to be a brilliant broker, provide ideas, provide introductions as well, for ways of being able to find shadowing opportunities and promote them too. So do look out for that. And I think that there's so much here that I'm hearing that yeah, we will keep the conversation going for sure. But thank you, Penny.
Thank you. I'm going to roll two questions together now. So there's a question about, have you changed the way that your meetings are run as a result of having shadowies in the room? And also a question from Helen about how you're embedding what you've learned from this process and how you're going to maintain lived experience in your decision making. So what one feels kind of practical, what's changed, and Paul, you touched on that already, and the other is a kind of a deeper question about lived experience in governance. And which of the panelists might like to take that? Paul, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just thinking just in terms of how the meetings have changed. So in terms of the actual process of sending out a big pile of board papers in advance and the sort of structure of the meetings, they really haven't changed actually that much, really. I think it's been more about the culture of the meetings rather than those kind of practicalities. And comparing, for example, what board meetings were like 3 or 4 years ago compared to now, there's definitely much more of a focus, and I certainly think that the shadowing programme has helped accelerate that. There is more of a focus on the impact that we want to achieve rather than some of the other governance type issues that trustees often have to tend to as well, about the structure of the organisation and so on. We're now having much deeper conversations about impact and certainly about lived experience. I think the shadowing programme, I think, has been a gateway to push us into also looking at other ways in which we might involve lived experience in our actual grant making programmes and how we make decisions on that as well. So it's one of those programmes where you take one step forward, and then if you're open to it, other opportunities arise that are connected to the original idea. But I think why it's worked for us is that it is a core part of our mission. It feels like it's a core part of our mission. And I think that again is another learning, I think, as well, that for it to work well, I think it really has to be a core part of what you want to do as an organisation.
Thank you. Umbreen, any further thoughts on embedding lived experience in governance?
I think that, so the opportunities, I mean, there's been, yes, observe a board meeting, yes, come along to the opportunity to again observe a grant making panel, a decision making panel. And I'm hoping that we will move. So one of the discussions we've been having recently is about another decision making meeting for Smallwood around funding that's being distributed. And we're talking about how lived experience, it'd be great to get somebody's voice in there. But by having Saira and Shana and Shiku there, we've got people who are now comfortable with us, comfortable in that space, who hopefully, if we invite them, and hopefully we will, into that space to not just be observers, but to say what they think, given their lived experience, that they'll be able to do so in a much more confident, honest and upfront way. So actually, for me, it's about, they've hopefully gone on a journey with us. We've all got to know each other well, and hopefully we're more comfortable, and being comfortable in a space means that you just are able to be more authentic and bring your voice to the table more confidently. So, there is, because often what happens is that people are brought on board and it's hard to speak up in those spaces because they're quite intimidating.
Absolutely. We've got 1 minute left, or Shana will start shouting at us. Jess.
Just one quick question. One quick response, really, as a recruiter. I think obviously lots of board roles are advertised by charities themselves. Others are managed by recruiters and search firms like Prospectus. And if you do see a role that's advertised by a recruiter like us, do get in touch, even if you feel that you're not ready, because I think it's a really important part of the conversations that we have about being able to feed back to our clients to say, you know what, we've got all of these brilliant people who are interested in your work. They may not quite be ready yet, they may be at the beginning of their trustee journey, but let's open up the conversation. And we've done some really exciting things there. So do think about that too.
Great, thank you. On that note, Jess, can I have 1 minute of your 5 minutes? Thank you, because I want to end hearing with Saira and Shana. What would you advise charities sitting on this call thinking about setting up a shadowing scheme? What's the immediate thing that pops into your head as your quick kind of, you know, don't do this thing or definitely do this other thing? Shana, what are your thoughts?
I think if you're a charity and you are there to support people, you know, most vulnerable people in society, I think it's good practice to have those people on your board, because how do you know you're doing it right? How do you possibly know if you haven't created a seat at the table for a person that is using your service? So I think it's just good practice.
Thank you. And Saira?
I agree with Shana that the charities should recruit those who are going through the same, otherwise they want to know most important thing, which is making the space comfortable. Because if you are bringing people with lived experience, there might be people who are currently going through, like myself. It's very important to make the space very welcoming, very much comfortable, so that people can, can be a part of it. And I must say that, especially with Ambreen, I have felt very, very comfortable. Otherwise, I don't think I would continue. So it's really important that you make your space welcoming for these shadowies. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you. So on that note, sorry that we haven't got to all of the brilliant questions. I'm going to pass back to Jess.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you, all of our panel, for the powerful, practical and personal insights and responses. To Shana for your amazing timekeeping and hosting today. Yes, to Saira, thank you so much for bringing this completely to life for us. To Paul, for walking us through all of your insights, and to Ambreen for being the catalyst really for this programme and sharing it and driving the change. Huge thanks to Mita Desai from the Young Trustees Movement, and Penny Wilson from Getting on Board for helping us elevate your questions and make sure that we're answering them. Big thanks to my colleagues in Prospectus, Lottie and Chris. Do look out for the resource document that's coming round. We're going to circulate this webinar too, so we hope that it will be circulated really, really widely. We felt there's so much amazing content here. We think we might be creating more content around some of the questions, so please do look out for this. We just hope that we've motivated and inspired you and equipped you with some of the resources you might need to develop your own shadowing board shadowy programme. It has such a huge impact on individuals, on organisations, on governance and on society, and we can do it. I hope you all come away feeling that you can. Thank you once again, everybody, and we will close things down now, but thanks so much for taking time out, and please do fill in the form if you haven't already. Thank you. Bye-bye.